everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Today we are discussing all things one-to-one coaching. We've seen a big demand over the last few years for one-to-one training, and I think that trend's going to continue. We've done them for probably nearly 10 years since we started, and we've coached all ages and abilities. Personally, I probably do about 100 one-to-one sessions a year. As a coaching team, that's probably closer to 150, 200. So we've got a lot of experience in this area, and we want to break it all down today to give parents a good overview, just so you can decide if you are considering one-to-one coaching, if it is the right thing for your child, because the truth is it isn't the right thing for everyone, and we'll go into that shortly. The reason that we want to do this is we're getting a lot more requests, and we're also seeing that one-to-ones are being missold sometimes, or parents are signing up to one-to-one training that isn't right. It isn't being done in the right way. Well-meaning people, but it's just not doing what the parent is hoping it will do. And again, we're going to go into that shortly. Sometimes it's just a case of it's a complete waste of money and time for parents and for children. So hopefully you'll understand that this is going to be a completely unbiased opinion, because as a business, one-to-ones are part of what we do, and we profit from one-to-ones. We make money from one-to-ones, so there's no hiding there. But what we also do is turn away a lot of parents who make requests to us for one-to-one coaching, and we try to explain why. So we're not coming at this saying one-to-one coaching is the be-all and end-all, you must do it. We're actually going to give a bit of an unbiased opinion. After this, you should be in a much better position to make a decision. If you are considering one-to-one coaching, you'll be able to make a better decision of whether it's a good thing for your child or not. And what I'd say on that as well is, and I'll repeat this at the end, but if you are still unsure, just drop us a message, because we can give you the right advice, hopefully. Okay, so we're going to break it down into a few different sections. We're going to start first with the positives and the reasons to do them, okay? I'll try and give you some examples around this as well. So one of the biggest things that we see is they can boost confidence, okay? I'll always use an example of a little boy that came to our sessions a good few years ago now. He turned up to a group session and he was absolutely petrified, crying, would not go into the AstroTurf where we train, just beside himself, would not enter at all. And I think his dad had struggled for a few months to get him into any sort of group football coaching. So we had a chat, and his dad asked if one-to-ones might benefit him. So we agreed that let's do a couple and just see if we can make him a bit more comfortable. And the good news was, I think he did 2 or 3, and after that, due to just having a bit more belief in himself, and having me just telling him that he's a good player and he can do it and so forth, he then ended up getting involved, and he just went from strength to strength from there, to be honest. But it wasn't because of the one-to-ones that he got good at football. It was because of the group stuff, but it just gave him that confidence just to join in, basically. So they can be great for that. And that's a really good example that we use quite a lot, that if a child is struggling and maybe really shy, lacks a bit of self-belief, then a couple of one-to-ones with a coach that's giving constant positivity and good feedback and reinforcement, it can help make that transition into a group session a little bit easier. They're fun, probably a bit more interesting than training alone, and it's almost like individual training but with feedback. So instead of just kicking a ball against the wall at home, you've got somebody there that's chatting to you, giving you that positive reinforcement, giving you some tips and hints and so on. So it is a little bit more fun. And another example, recently I had a decent chat with a parent who I advised that one-to-one coaching isn't the right thing for them. They had done one-to-ones in the past, but he said that his child actually got a lot out of it, because he enjoyed being with one of our coaches who he enjoyed being coached by. So rather than him not listening to dad's a pretty good footballer, got out to the park with him and all that, but you know what kids are like, they're probably not going to listen to the parents. But the boy did listen to the coach, and he enjoyed having that one-to-one time with the coach, playing some football. So that, that in itself is not a bad thing at all. It's not that the one-to-one was perhaps making him better at football. It was just a case of he enjoyed being coached by his group coach. So that's, that again in itself is a positive thing, that they are fun, done in the right way. They are fun and enjoyable. There's some transfer, there is some learning. We're going to go into more of this shortly, but we will talk about this. But there's a difference between learning and performing, learning and performance. And some of what you do in a one-to-one, in a good one-to-one, it can transfer to a game. It can transfer to an opposed environment, but it's only some. It's only bits. Okay, well, again, we'll talk about that in a second. It's arguably that it's better than sitting at home in front of a screen. And if a child needs the motivation of being coached one-to-one, if that's going to be the difference between them sat at home doing nothing or getting out for half an hour, 45 minutes or so, and playing a little bit of football and kicking around with a coach, then that's probably better. Also, some higher level players, perhaps, they might get more from sitting at home on a screen, but only if they're sitting at home on a screen watching football, maybe watching clips of their games. It could be a kid that's not a high level player, but is at home watching football matches, watching their favourite player on YouTube, whatever it might be, and just picking up some tips and things like that. Watching football is great. It can be a powerful tool. So I guess it depends on the screen time. If the screen time's been used for football related stuff, for a bit more learning on that side, that could be fine. But it does probably be being sat at home on the sofa just vegging out. If you're not really active, if the child's not really active, then another a one-to-one is probably better than that. There are mental benefits, I'd say. Some may argue to the contrary, but I think the fact that getting out and training shows determination, it shows a work ethic, and it just helps build that mentality, really, because they're getting out, and it's not easy, and it can be quite intense. You've got, although they are fun, it's again 30 to 45 minutes of training with one-to-one, where there's no hiding place. So the coach is seeing every little thing that you're doing, and that can be daunting sometimes. But the fact that a child is prepared to go and train, it just shows a bit of determination and maybe a bit of resilience as well. Maybe they're training in terrible weather, which is even worse sometimes when you're on your own. There are no hiding places. So getting out and training, there's probably some mental benefits there in some way or other. And you get the reps in. Okay, so we talked before there about kicking a ball against the wall. Basic actions is a term that we've learned over the last few years. Basic actions, not football actions. You're kicking a ball, you're not passing a ball, which again we'll come on to shortly. But getting some extra reps in, it's not a bad thing, as long as parents and children are aware that getting those reps in, it's about, can it transfer to the game, and that's what we'll come on to shortly. So yeah, a few positives there, and a few reasons to maybe look at them. Negatives, okay, and maybe reasons not to do them. So there's definitely not as much learning as there would be from a group football coaching session. The right group football coaching session is what I probably should say. So learning versus performance, okay? Now what I mean by that is that performance, you could take your child to a one-to-one session and they could be dancing around cones, doing all the tricks, all the flicks. They might have, we could maybe take a child and take them for 6 to 8 sessions and have them doing all sorts of little things with the ball, all looks brilliant. But that's performing, okay? They can perform. What have they learned? Okay, and that is the biggest difference, learning versus performance. Learning is when they do something which then can transfer to the actual game environment, okay, the football context. And that is one of the biggest issues with one-to-one coaching. We've tried every which way, what about this drill if we adapt that, what if we do this, and it'll be closer to the game. It is so hard, because fundamentally a one-to-one is not training in a match context. So learning versus performance is something that parents need to be aware of. Although it might look like a child is getting better, it might just be that they're performing. Okay, they're not learning. Learning is when it transfers to the game, and in order to do that, they need to learn and train in an opposed environment, in the right group session, basically. And I always sort of use an example of, we could do 50 shots at goal. Okay, I could pass the ball to a child, they could take a touch, have a shot, and we could do that 50 times. Will they learn as much as trying 10 shots in an opposed environment where there's all sorts going on? There's more defenders. There's defenders to think about. It's okay. The players pass me the ball to this foot. I need to get it to that foot because there's a defender oncoming. Where's the goalkeeper stood? So 50 shots unopposed. I'd argue you're not going to learn as much as 10 shots in an opposed environment. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And a recent example we had of that was we had a small group session of some players who were all of a very decent standard, all in academies, and we had I think 4 or 5 of them. And Nick actually tested a drill, so he let them do 5 shots unopposed, and then it was 5 shots opposed. And one of the players hit 4 out of 5 back of the net, no problem, in the opposed session. As soon as that transferred to the opposed, he hit 1 out of 5. Okay, but guess which one he's probably learnt more from? So it's these things that we try to get parents to understand, that there is a big difference between being able to kick a ball at a goal or kick a ball to a coach and passing in a football context, shooting in a football context. It's those things where children will learn more, okay? I spoke before about boosting confidence. Now, a negative could be the reverse of that. It's sort of like they get overconfident in the one-to-ones, and then it doesn't transfer to the game. They go to a group session and it all falls apart because they think they've got good at football, but then all of a sudden, when you've put these other people in this session who are now trying to steal that ball, it can all fall apart. So, an example of this would be maybe a complete beginner and a well-meaning parent decides, right, I'm going to book 12 one-to-ones, just get them doing the basics. Yeah, that's something we hear quite a lot. Get them doing the basics, learning the basics. That's, in theory, you could be forgiven for thinking that's a good idea. But the problem is that what happens then when we put that child in a group environment, we're conditioning their brain without any opposition. Okay, so they've got all the time in the world, but when we put them in that group environment, they've now got people trying to steal that ball from them, and there's all sorts going on. They've got to get their head up and look around. That doesn't happen in a one-to-one. So the confidence can quickly evaporate to the point of possibly not wanting to play anymore because they thought they were getting good at football, but actually they weren't. They were getting good at kicking a ball, kicking actions, as opposed to football actions, okay? And that's something that we've learned over the last couple of years on some of the courses we've been on with FC Evolution and stuff that we're big fans of. It's looking at the different elements of training. It's your football actions, your kicking actions, your basic actions. It's the football actions are what make the biggest difference, and that can be a problem with one-to-ones. Cones can't tackle is what we always say. It's all right getting a child to dribble really fast around cones and do lots of turns around cones, but the big problem is that cones can't tackle, okay? Until they grow legs and start moving around, then you're better off trying to play against defenders. As I said, to truly improve, we need to play against others who challenge us at the right level, Okay, and we'll come on to that shortly. So who might they benefit? Okay, we're looking at who they benefit and who they won't benefit. So who they might benefit, and might being the key word, are kids that are massively struggling to join in, going back to the earlier example. But I've just given you an example of when that could all fall apart. So we need to balance that right. It's maybe giving them a bit of exposure to one-to-ones just to give them the confidence boost without overexposure, which then leads to possibly them being thinking they've improved when we put them into a group session, it's quickly apparent that they haven't. Now, that doesn't happen all the time. You know, it might be absolutely fine. It can come down to who they're playing with, who they're playing against. But that's the balance. It's understanding, okay, my child is petrified to join in, really, really shy. Let's do a couple of one-to-ones and then try to make that transition, okay? And you need to judge it child by child. There's not a one-size-fits-all, but that's the trade-off, is how many one-to-ones do we need to do to get them in enough of a belief to join in. The other benefit would be players who are already group training to a good standard and probably doing it 3 to 4 times a week, subject to the time of year, you know, if it's the off season or during the season when they'll have matches added to that as well. So those little extras, if they're going to get out in the garden, if they're playing that amount of time anyway, they're probably kids that are going to get out in the garden and do some work themselves. So going back to the earlier examples, it can be a bit more of a fun thing to do with coaches. Those kids, they probably want to work on certain little bits and techniques and things like that, and you can do that. It's about, will it transfer to the game, but it's possibly not a bad thing for them to do. You know, it shouldn't have too much of a detriment, because they're getting what they need from that 3 to 4 sessions per week in a group environment. That's where the magic's happening. Kids who won't benefit. Kids only playing once or twice a week, it's to improve, they need more group training. Okay, it's as simple as that, and we'll give you a bit more info on that shortly. But if your child's only training once a week, then, and possibly even twice a week, the thing that's going to improve them is finding more group training with the right coaching, right environment, and right ability level. Okay. The other people, the other players who won't benefit are kids who are looking to work on things that simply won't transfer to the game. Okay, and we've got some good examples of this coming up, but there's some things that parents email us about that I want them to work on X, Y, and Z. My child really wants to work on this, and it's stuff that simply cannot be done in a one-to-one because it'd be a waste of time. It won't transfer to the game. Okay, so we'll come on to that shortly. So, on that, what they don't help with, what one-to-ones do not help with. Okay, we'll go through some examples of this as we go along, and I'm going to give you examples of. We have a booking form that comes through on our website, and we ask the parent what they want their child to work on, what their child wants to work on. So the examples I'm going to give you now are recent examples of what parents have put on these forms, just so you can understand, and it makes things a bit more real. Okay, first one, scanning. Everyone's favourite buzzword. You can't work on scanning in a one-to-one session, and you're listening to somebody who firmly believed it could happen, who has tried everything, we're talking iPads, we're talking me holding cones up or getting somebody else to hold cones up, anything you can think of, having an iPad behind them. They've got to tell me the colour before the ball reaches them, they've got to answer a maths question before the ball reaches them. All sorts of stuff. Fun, don't get me wrong, we had a great laugh doing it, fun, but it isn't scanning, it isn't communicating with the environment. It's just a waste of time. In my mind, I was thinking, yeah, but it'll just develop the habit. They'll keep turning the shoulder. But it's what we've come to learn over the last sort of 12 to 18 months is it's about how are we conditioning the brain of that player. Turning and looking for a cone, turning and looking for the colour on an iPad, answering a question on an iPad. That doesn't happen in a football match. So we're not conditioning the brain correctly. I would think, yeah, but they're still going to turn the shoulder, but it doesn't matter. What they're looking for, different information, different bits of information in scanning football terms. In a game, they're looking for other players. They're looking for space. They're looking for the ball, maybe the goal, where the goalkeeper is. Blah blah blah. In a one-to-one, it doesn't happen. It can't happen. So yeah, I might have been developing the habit of moving their shoulder, but moving the head, turning the head. But was it transferring to a game? No. In order to develop scanning, kids need to be exposed to better training sessions, better training activities that develop scanning in a football context. Okay, and that's something that we've been big on over the last couple of years, and some of the games-based activities that we've been doing have been working on that, where kids are naturally doing it because the game is forcing it, not because we're telling them to scan, and not because we're putting iPads and all sorts of other stuff around the area. Okay, so scanning, nope, it won't happen. Agility, speed, reactions, movement. I am a player, ex-player that don't worry, I didn't get to any sort of high standard. Probably made myself sound a bit better than I was then. But I was slow, okay, slow, and certainly not fast. I made up for that in certain positions by positioning myself at the right time in the right areas. But I would have killed to have been fast. So I became quite obsessed with this a few years ago, and I went through and did the SAQ qualifications. I trained up as an SAQ advanced trainer. I did some of their strength courses as well. I really enjoyed it, by the way. You know, it was great. And I added a lot of that to my one-to-ones. So you came to my one of my one-to-ones, my one-to-one sessions years ago, and you'd see ladders, hurdles, you'd see reaction lights, and all sorts of stuff. Outlook the business, and I genuinely thought it was helping. Okay, but it's only through research and expanding my knowledge that I've realised to get better agility for football, you need to play more football. To get faster for football, we need to sprint more when we're playing football. Movement, reactions, it all happens from playing football, because I was, in my mind, making kids faster. We were doing all the little footwork drills through the agility ladders and the jumps over the hurdles and stuff. And, is there some transference again? Possibly, but nothing beats playing football. But again, it's the right sessions. We looked at some research papers recently where they compared things like playing 3v3 football, and how that is so much better for agility. And it's true, because you're moving in a football context. So we certainly cut back on all that now. Again, there might have been some transference, but for us, we've put them away. It's just kicking stuff now. It's receiving the ball and stuff like that. It's not ladders and hurdles, because we're trying to maximise that time in those one-to-ones, and we know that the ladders and the hurdles and stuff aren't maximising that time. There's a lot of stuff online now about the ladders. There's a lot of people that are really demonising them, because it just doesn't transfer to most sports, to be honest. They're just not what people think they are. Possibly cool for a PE lesson, doing some little obstacle courses and stuff like that, bit of physical literacy, fine. But we have stopped using them and selling them as a this will make you faster for football tool, because that's not what it is. You look at players like Bernardo Silva, Kevin De Bruyne, Iniesta, Busquets from a few years ago. These guys think quicker and act quicker on the pitch. They've got, they've got brilliant football brains. They're able to make these decisions much faster, which makes them look like they're playing a faster game. It's not like they're faster than some players, but they're not fast. You wouldn't look at them and think, oh, they're quick. They're not Mbappe, but they don't rely on physical speed. They rely on speed of mind. So it's thinking of that. That only comes from playing more football, okay, and becoming a better decision maker from playing more football. So yeah, certainly the SAQ stuff with the speed, agility, quickness, we've really stepped away from that from a one-to-one perspective because it just doesn't transfer to the game. Again, so you could maybe look at basic speed, so just being able to run 20 meters faster, fine. Is that going to help in a football context? Possibly, but again, it's the stuff, it's the quick decisions and things like that that are going to help more. Playing more football would help more than that, in our opinion. Aggression, defending, tackling. These are things that I have to sort of rub my eyes when I see them come through on a form, because how in a one-to-one can I teach a child to be aggressive? How in a one-to-one can I teach a child to tackle? I'm a 38-year-old man possibly coaching a 9-year-old child. So, joking aside, the tackling thing, it comes from playing more football. I keep going back to this thing. It comes from the right training sessions, maybe doing more 1v1 work where there's no hiding place. Maybe parents praising and encouraging that more than hoping and keeping your fingers crossed that a one-to-one is automatically going to make them press more, be more aggressive. It's not. That's going to come from the group stuff and their coaches and their group training, putting on the right activities and doing the right things, and you as parents encouraging it, like I say, and possibly rewarding it. But yeah, like teaching a child to be aggressive, that's a hard thing in a group training session, let alone a one-to-one. And then the tackling, yeah, we could probably look at the right sort of body shape and where to position the feet and so on. But football is reactionary, and I could get them into a position to defend and getting low and stuff like that. Fine, thinking about the some of the principles behind it, but it doesn't matter. They've got to react to what the other player is doing, and so to get better at tackling, they need to play against more players that have got the ball and try and take it off them. Okay, lastly, one that we get asked for a lot is ball mastery, footwork, skills. Ball mastery is another one of those buzz terms in football coaching. And a lot of people listening to this will know, we've said numerous times, we used to love ball mastery. Ball mastery used to form probably first quarter to a third of our group sessions when we first started. But through expanding our knowledge and research, we went away from it because we realised that we weren't maximising the time we had with our players by using so much of our 1 hour sessions to do individual work. The stuff that was making the biggest difference was the opposed stuff. So let's look at this from a one-to-one perspective. We could spend hours and hours and hours with a child teaching them all these fancy flicks and tricks, but we need to understand, is this going to transfer to the game? And there'll be people arguing that, well, yeah, how do they know how to do a step over if they've never been shown how to do a step over? How do they know how to do an L turn if they've never been shown how to do an L turn? I can't teach a rainbow flick, but how are they ever going to do a rainbow flick if they've never been taught to do a rainbow flick? What we say and what we've proven with our sessions is that kids don't need to be taught something to be able to do it, okay? I've got a little boy in one of my sessions who was late to football and works so hard. I believe we're the only 1 hour session he does a week. He does lots of other things in between, but football wise, he's only comes with us. He just loves playing his football, doesn't want to take it much further than just an hour a week. And he is now doing stuff with a ball, little drags, little L turns, all sorts of little body shifts and feints and step over and what have you. I've not once taught him that. Maybe he's got in the garden once or twice and done a few bits, but what he's got is an ability to react to what's going on around him, and the sessions that he's been exposed to have meant that he's had to develop some close control and develop his footwork because we've constrained things for him or for the group. So he's naturally had to do things because he's reacted to what's going on around him. Now, in a one-to-one, we're not going to get that. but I could show kids how to do all these little bits like we used to do. But then the question is it going to transfer to the game? And hopefully now you understand that the best way to develop these skills and ball mastery things is going to be by doing it when it's needed. And again, it's hard. It was certainly hard for me to get my head around it originally, but it's about exposing them to things where they've got to react and move the ball in a certain way and move the body in a certain way because there's something going on. Ball mastery to me has changed from being all the fancy flicks and tricks and the individual tapping the ball here and there to children making the right pass. Okay, being able to pass first time between two players to their teammate, being able to shoot in the bottom corner because the goalkeeper is at the other side, being able to take the ball down and control it whilst they've got a defender behind them. These things to me, that is ball mastery. And it's ball mastery in a football context. It's not just doing tricks and flicks for the sake of it. Can some of it transfer to the game? Yes, of course. You know, if we teach a kid a step over, then you know that can transfer to a game. But it's only going to be beneficial if they need it. And what's much more beneficial is them learning these things themselves in a game context, and being able to react to what's going on around them. You know, there's a reason why the world's best freestylers aren't professional footballers, aren't playing in the Premier League. They can do all the things with the football, but if it doesn't transfer to the game, it doesn't matter. And we all know there'll be plenty of people listening to this that all knew somebody growing up that could do everything with the football, but put them in a match and they'd have it taken off them in half a second because they were so used to just doing bits away from, you know, the group stuff, that they tried all this fancy stuff, but it just didn't pay off because their first thought was, I want to do a step over. It wasn't, actually, I could just drop my shoulder and go that way. And you get people that want to do the trick for the sake of doing the trick, is the point I'm trying to make. And that's the thing with the ball mastery. It's understanding that part, but also understanding that true ball mastery is the other stuff. It's being able to pass, shoot and dribble in context and taking less touches and whatever. So hopefully that point makes sense there. I've waffled on a little bit with that bit, but it's why do you want your child to learn ball mastery? Just because you've seen some kid online doing it and you think that's football? It's understand the why of what you're asking for. Don't just do it because it looks good. Why? What's going on? You know, is it because they're struggling to keep control of the ball while they're dribbling? You know, that whatever it might be, but don't just use these terms for the sake of it, and understand that true ball mastery is maybe a bit different to what you're seeing online. And is it worth it in a one-to-one? Can you work on it in a one-to-one? You know, massive question marks. Okay, so what are better options for those parents listening to this that have come to the conclusion now that actually one-to-ones aren't right for me, my child? What else can you do? Okay, what's going to be better? So we advise a lot of parents around some of these ideas, and then they can take it or leave it. What we say is, you know, look, this is what we think, this is what I think would be better. We won't do a one-to-one with your child because they're not going to get the most out of it, but here are some options for you, okay? So, a lot of it comes down to group training, as you can probably gather, okay? So I've rambled on about that enough now, but the first thing to consider is how much is your child training, the quality of the coaching and the training sessions, and the ability level of the players they're playing with, okay? Then you adjust accordingly. So if your child is only training once a week, one-to-ones are probably not going to be the best thing for them. Let's look at increasing that by a session a week at least, okay? Maybe a child is training 2 to 3 times per week and they're still struggling with certain things, they're not improving, okay? Let's look at the quality of the coaching and the quality of the training sessions. Maybe the training sessions are focused on dribbling around cones. going through hurdles, going through ladders, doing laps of the pitch, and they're simply not playing enough football within that session, and proper football, so playing against other players in a games-based way. Okay, so that's certainly one thing to look at. Maybe the coach does have some brilliant activities, but they're stopping it every 30 seconds, and the kids just aren't getting into the flow of the session, and they're not getting enough touches of the ball because the coach prefers to stop it every 30 seconds to a minute and tell everybody how much they know about football. Okay, so quality of the coaching, quality of the training. If they are training a good few times a week but not improving, look at that. Okay, and then it's a case of, I need to find better quality coaching, better quality training with activities that are going to actually develop my child, develop my player. Also, ability level. So maybe you've got the number of sessions, maybe you've got the good coaching, the quality sessions, but the ability level isn't there. And that might be that the ability level isn't good enough, so your child isn't being challenged enough. We've spoke about this in previous podcasts. We're probably going to do a little bit more on this, but to get better at football, it's a case of being able to do all the things that your player can do with less space and time, okay, around the pitch. Playing with and against players that are at the same level and slightly above are going to help your player improve and go to that next level. Playing with players who are trying really hard. They're not just there for the sake of it because mum and dad want them to be a footballer and they're not really into it. Playing with those other players is going to help. If your child is in an environment where they're playing against players who aren't that fussed and therefore they're not going to be trying as hard, then your child's probably not going to improve because your child needs everybody on it. Your child needs everybody to really want to play and win. So if they're not getting that challenge because the other players have just got their hands in the pockets and just, kicking grass, then that's something to consider. Equally, your child might be playing in an ability level that's too high. So they're not getting much of the ball. They're not doing a lot because they're just playing with players who are too good. In which case, okay, let's look at knocking that down a peg or two, and then we can try and build that up further down the line. Okay, so you've got to take the ego out of it there a little bit and maybe just look at it from an objective point of view. But if the players your child is playing against and with are just too good, then they might not improve either. Okay, now that might sound counter to what I've said just then about actually getting the right challenge, but it's about looking at your player. Your player might be in the right ability level and getting the right challenge, but equally they might just be, and they need those kids to push them on. But you might just have it where your kids playing with some really good kids and you think, oh yeah, brilliant, they're going to improve, but those kids are just too good right now, and hopefully your child will get there, but right now they're just too good, and it's not going to benefit your child. So ability level is important, okay, at either end, whether a child needs to be challenged more by playing against players who are better or at an equal footing, or playing against players, not playing with players who are too good. The other thing that we say to parents is save your cash, round up 6 of their mates and hire a five-a-side pitch. Okay, so for probably the same money you're going to spend, go and hire a five-a-side pitch or wherever, or go to the park, round up the mates and just let them play. Okay, going back to sort of the street football. So if they could play street football, brilliant. Not everyone can do that anymore, but if not, get them together, get them to the park, go rent a five-a-side court for an hour, and just let them play. Okay, because that is going to be way more powerful. Especially again going back to if they're a similar ability level and so forth, that's going to be way more powerful. And if you can do that once a week or however much as you can, that's going to be as good as anything. Okay, so have a think about that. Small groups, this is something we've been trialling recently and really enjoyed it. I mentioned earlier we had probably, I think there were 6 of them, 6 players. They were from different academies, and we got a goalkeeper as well, and it was brilliant. We coached them. They got all the benefits of that one-to-one contact time with the coach, but all the huge development that comes with playing with and against players. And it goes back to what I've just said before. They were all playing with players that were on it, they were playing against players who were at a similar level, and pushing each other. And it was just fantastic to see. We did 4 sessions with them. It was Nick that took them, and he loved it. He loved it, as did the players. The feedback we had was brilliant. But that could be something to consider. So if you may be a parent looking at this thinking, I want the benefit to the one-to-ones, then do you know 2 or 3 other parents where you could maybe get three other kids and do a group of 4? Okay, and as long as they're all of a similar ability level, they all want to be there, then they're going to get a lot more out of that, okay, than just a one-to-one. Camps. So depending on where you listen to this, you're probably local to some place that's doing a football camp, and hopefully it's a good one. Obviously, we do them in the school holidays. But we had a chat with a parent the other day. He asked if he could book one-to-ones for both his children, and we just said to him, look, for half the price, instead of getting a 30-minute to 45-minute one-to-one, they could come to do 6 hours of a camp. So why not just do that? The way we run our camps is we train the kids. We want to make sure they're developing. We have loads of fun, but it's run as training sessions and little mini tournaments and stuff, with the focus on fun and development. So they booked onto the camp, and we're really pleased they did, because we know that's going to help them more. They've got 45-minute one-to-one, or 30-minute one-to-one, compared to 6 hours of proper football. So hopefully now you understand which one's probably going to develop them more. Again, everywhere's different. You might get some places where it's just glorified babysitting and not really doing much football. We can't account for that, but certainly how we do it is football development. So if you've got camps near you that are good, get them on that instead of one-to-one. Certainly over the summer when you're looking into the off-season and pre-season. That's going back to earlier on, the street football thing. If you're lucky enough to be in an environment where kids can be out playing, then encourage them to get out and play on the street with their football, with their friends, because that's again, like we know from being kids, that was really powerful. So hopefully that's just gives you a few different options. I think the biggest one, as I've said, it goes back to that first point there. How much are they training? What's the quality of the training and the coaching like, and what are the ability level of the players like? Okay, if you could adjust those things, that's probably the first place to start. Okay, and then just go from there. So, conclusion, most of the time, playing more football is the answer. And I guess it goes without saying, given everything that I've just been waffling on about, playing more football is the answer a lot of the time. Okay, every child's different. Of course, there are exceptions to the rule. There always will be. But you're seeing, going back to things like the ball mastery and stuff like that, you see the best of things on social media. You see kids that are able to do all these sort of brilliant things with the ball. Number one, does that transfer to the game? And it might do. Brilliant. They might be able to do a lot of. They might still be a good player in a football match, even though they do all this stuff around cones and stuff. Fine, they're probably that's fine. But the question would be, are they good at football because of the one-to-one coaching where they're dribbling around cones, or in spite of? And I'd argue that the group training that they're doing, which is probably of a decent standard, and a lot of it, that will be making more of a difference than the one-to-one coaching unopposed. We'll continue to offer them because they do benefit some players, some children, as we said before, and there are plenty of good one-to-one coaches out there, I'm sure. We just try to do the right things. We try to advise parents and give them an honest opinion. And as I say, I felt the need to do this because we've just turned away so many over the last sort of, I don't know, 3 to 6 months or so. There's more forms coming in, there's more requests, and we're turning more and more away for the reasons that I've said above. And these parents, maybe they're going elsewhere and still just determined to get that one-to-one because they think it's going to be the answer. I do think a lot of the time it comes from a good place. Parents are trying to help their child, of course, but it isn't the silver bullet that a lot of people think it is. Of course, it can help some players, and we've got countless examples of children that it has helped, but they were getting some of the other bits as well that we've spoke about today. Doing a group session and a one-to-one session is not going to be as good as doing 2 good group sessions. So it isn't always a silver bullet. Be careful what you're looking at and seeing online with these kids that can do all the tricks and flicks, and they've got a one-to-one coach selling their services because it looks fantastic, but that doesn't mean it's transferring to the game. Okay, if that was the case, then we'd have hundreds of football freestylers that were Premier League footballers. Okay, so just being able to do all these things doesn't mean they're good at football. And even if they are good at football, as I've said, that's not because of the one-to-one training. It's because of the other stuff that they're doing, or certainly the other stuff has had more of an impact. So, as I said earlier, if you need any advice on this, if you're thinking about one-to-ones and you need more opinion, please do let us know. But hopefully that has answered a lot of questions. And thank you, as always, for listening.